Today on Auto Momenti Garage, it is Flare Day. So I picked up a set of flares on the cheap from a guy that had some extra Bronco parts laying around, and these have never been used because they don't even have the holes drilled into them. They are the Guerrilla War flares. That's what it said on the box, and we're going to put those on the Bronco today. I already have flares on the Bronco that came with the Bronco. Unfortunately though, the holes obviously don't line up because they're two different brands of flares, but we're going to kind of take care of that. We'll see how that goes. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I have to do some research on how I can fill those holes if they don't line up, but I'm going to do some interesting things with these flares because I want to have them be removable in case something happens and I'm damaging them at some point, but hopefully that won't happen because they are Guerrilla War flares, so we'll see how this goes. I'm going to show you exactly what it is I'm going to do. Okay, as you can see, these are my old flares. I wasn't really concerned about getting paint on them and stuff as I was painting it, obviously, because I knew I was probably going to change them out. They're not bad flares, but they do have cracks in them, so I didn't like them being cracked and everything. And they're not as stout. They're not bad, but I'm going to change them out, put in. But the first thing we need to do is, well, the second thing we need to do is cut that fender, which kind of pains me a little bit because it's a very nice fender. But in order for this to look right with all four of the flares, and I do like the look of all four of the flares, it's got to get done. But before I can do that, though, I have to drill the holes out of these flares. Alright, let's drill some holes. Alright, one down, ready to go. So here's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm actually going to test the rivnuts on some sheet metal because I want to make sure that they hold properly before I go and I drill 20 holes in each fender. I don't want them falling out. So I'm going to test that right now on an old fender and see if the rivnuts hold well. Okay, this is my first rivnut experience. I've never done rivnuts before. So basically you've got a threaded end in here that mounts inside here. Now the thing that's kind of screwy is everything is lefty-tighty, righty-loosey on these. Because when you take this out, they don't want you unscrewing the die or the tap or whatever this thing is called. So I got it in there as tight as I can go. The other thing too is I think this is just going to take a really, really long time. Okay, so here we go. Let's see if this works. I've never done this before, so here we go. Alright, let's see how solid this is. Now I gotta take this out. Okay, so we're supposed to go this way. Oh, this is really tough. Is it screwing out? There we go. Yes, it's screwing out. Okay, this is what I came up with here. I had an old 15 millimeter wrench that had gotten broken, so I saved it, thinking maybe I could use this for something in the future, and lo and behold, this is what it's going to be. When this plate goes away, I'll probably release the rest. It did. Oh. It did not. Got it. And I moved. Sorry about the shadow. Alright, I've got the line drawn to do the cutout, and this is the part where it gets kind of, look, it's kind of scary. I hate cutting nice metal out of a truck, but here we go. Here I am picking up the broken pieces of my life. So this is all the carnage from my Rivnut experience. It was interesting. I'm going to tell you what I did do right and what I did do wrong. Okay, I'm going to tell you about my Rivnut experience. I've never done Rivnuts before. I've always wanted to do them, and I thought, you know what, now's the time. This is a perfect time. I'm putting fender flares on Arta Momenti. I want the fender flares to be removable, so I can paint them a different color if I so decide. And also, if I, bung them up and I need to replace them, it'll be a lot easier to do that way. Okay, so I went ahead and I bought this. This is the Rivnut tool on Amazon. I think it's probably about 27 bucks. There's more expensive ones online. And so I decided that my Rivnuts needed to be 3 millimeters because I wanted them about the size of rivets. That made sense to me, correct? All right, well, that's all good and dandy and everything, except for the 3 millimeter Rivnut is very, very small. Okay, so what kept happening was is I kept stripping it out when I would pull on it. You had to be very gentle, and within 6 or 7 rivnuts, gone. So I bought another mandrel. The mandrel that I thought was the right one to replace this was the incorrect one, but I figured a way around it, and I tried to make that one use, and also it was a little heavier dutier, and yeah, it stripped out too. So I'm coming to the conclusion that 3mm is really too small for any rivnut, let alone a rivnut for flares. So if you're ever thinking about doing 3mm, I would say don't do it, because I learned the hard way. Now, after I ordered all the hardware and I decided I'm going to keep all the 3mm stuff, you never know when I'm going to need it. It was relatively cheap. And so I was going to upgrade to 5mm, and 5mm still, in my opinion, was just a little too small. I kept bunging up everything and just screwing it up one after the other. So what I decided to do was upgrade to 6mm. Well, obviously that means drilling out a bigger hole. I was about as big as I really wanted to go, because any bigger than that, then the nut flares would probably stick out the side of the fender flare. So I went 6mm, and I got the 6mm in there, and lo and behold, I ordered steel rivnuts. I didn't order the aluminum ones. So this little guy was no way pulling a steel rivnut in there. So if you think you're going to do a steel rivnut with this, it's going to break on you. What happened was this actually separated that way, and so it became completely useless. I had to actually have to put this back in the vise to squeeze everything back together. You know, basically you get what you pay for. And since I have never ever used a rivnut, I didn't know what I was doing. Okay, so I went ahead and I charged on, and I figured out a way to do it. So what I ended up doing was, with my 6mm, I don't know how well you can see, I'll get a close-up of it, I made this little tool. This is a 15mm wrench that broke, and so what I ended up doing was welding a spacer nut on the end of it, putting this on here, and then just tightening the rivnuts down. And it worked okay. It was very clumsy. It took me forever. Okay, so after doing that first fender flare, I decided I really need to do something. So I went ahead and I got this. I've already tested this out. It works pretty good, I'm going to have to say. I don't feel like there's any stress on these fine threads. I've only done a couple of nuts, tested it out dry run, and I'm hoping for a lot better results. The reason I didn't want to go with one of these in the first place is because I knew that since that 3mm was such a thin, tiny bolt, that I figured if I was going to get in there, I was going to bend it, because this is a pretty big, long, bulky thing. But it's not that much longer, and it's even not that much heavier. So if you're going to do rivnuts, obviously get the right tool for the right job. A lot of good reviews on this. I'm sure with this tool I'm going to knock out a fender in an afternoon, as opposed to taking me 3 days. 3 days to put rivnuts in. Granted, I do have 4 children that need to be run around a lot, and we have appointments and jobs to go to, and Dad's on call. But I'm going to start working on the other fender flare so we can get this going.